Our guest, Dr. John Welty, has been a college president for almost 29 years. For the last 22 years, he served as president at California State University, Fresno. During his tenure, he's been responsible for a number of accomplishments. The first of the 23 campus CSU system schools to implement an independent doctoral program. The first of its kind honors program in the CSU system, the Smith-Camp Family Honors College. Admission into the Mountain West Athletic Conference. The construction of $425 million in new facilities on campus. And raising over $360 million in private donations, including a recently completed $200 million campaign for Fresno State. Of course, a 22-year leadership tenure is not without its controversies, including a men's basketball team under former coaches Jerry Tarkanian and Ray Lopes, subject to numerous NCAA rules infractions, and several costly gender discrimination lawsuits. As he retires, Dr. Welty looks back at the high points and challenges after serving as a university president for over a quarter of a century, and what the future holds for higher education in California and the San Joaquin Valley. Fresno State President John Welty, a retrospective.
From Fresno, the Maddy Report, with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Kepler.
Welcome. For the last 22 years, our guest has served as president of California State University, Fresno, commonly referred to as Fresno State, a fierce fundraiser whose commitment to academics and research has boosted Fresno State's profile. He'll be retiring as president at the end of the academic school year. Welcome back to the Maddy Report, President Welty.
Thank you.
You've been involved in higher education for quite some time. You've been a university president since way back in the 1980s. How has higher education changed over that time?
Well, I think probably the most dramatic change has been across the country. States have really disinvested in public higher education, and so that has resulted in increased cost to students. I think the second major change has been with the growth of technology and different forms of delivering instruction. We're really, I think, on the front end of some pretty dramatic changes in higher education, and it's not clear exactly where that's going to end, but certainly our ability to be more effective, our ability, I think, to reach students and to provide a richer experience has increased pretty significantly.
What about Fresno State? How have we changed since you arrived in 1991?
Well, there have been a lot of changes, and it's a great tribute to the faculty and staff and administrators at Fresno State. The university, I think, has grown in its academic quality and stature. We've certainly expanded the physical plant. We've added academic programs that I think have been a great benefit to the region, and I think we've been able to engage the university with this region in a way that our resources can be used to help address some of the most difficult problems the region faces.
That's a little unusual. A lot of universities have that town gown problem. We'll talk about that later, but we seem to have done a really good job of connecting the university to the community. What do you view as your greatest accomplishment? You had to pick one. And family is not included.
Right. I think probably the Smith-Camp Family Honors College has been one of the most significant things for the university in terms of not only attracting brighter students, but the impact those students have had on the campus, and really the work that faculty have been able to complete with the students.
Okay, and on the other side of the equation, if you had to do one do-over, what would it be?
Well, there's probably a long list of those, but I think there may be a couple of hires that we perhaps would have been better off.
And you're not looking at me, are you?
No, not at this point. No. But I think on balance, things have really gone pretty well. Hindsight's always better, but I think in general, as I said, with the exception of a couple hires, we've done pretty well.
You've been described as a fierce fundraiser, and that's a relatively new role for a California State University president. At the major universities, that's pretty common, but at Cal State's generally not. Why did you see that as important early on in your tenure, and how do you think it's distinguished Cal State Fresno from other Cal State campuses?
Yeah. Well, I think it was when I came in 1991, it was clear that for Fresno State to flourish, we were going to need to depend upon private support, because really the downturn in state funding was just beginning at that time, and it was clear that Fresno State had a number of programs that people were willing to invest in that could become distinctive from a national standpoint, and private support can make that difference.
So what is private support used for? If someone was to give dollars to the university, where does that money go?
Well, most private support we receive is designated by the donor. So typically it's someone that's interested in engineering, such as the Lyles family, or someone interested in business, as with Sid Craig, and you can go down the list of many of the major gifts we've received is because the donor has an interest in enhancing that program at the university.
So that money is taken typically in what? Scholarships are given to students?
It's typically, I mean, the major categories are scholarships, support for faculty, endowed chairs, and then probably facility improvements.
Let me ask you just a follow-up question on that. Endowed chairs, that's extra money given to faculty, essentially to recruit top faculty to come here. Why is that important at a university?
Well, it's extremely important to have the best possible faculty you can. And for an endowed chair, it allows you to attract someone that's top in their field. That person usually is not only going to do a great job in the classroom and in fact can help attract students, particularly graduate students, but they also are usually pretty effective in generating additional grant support for the university.
And again, when I first came to Cal State University Fresno back in 1987, that was a pretty rare thing to have an endowed chair at Cal State, and now we have quite a few at the university, don't we?
Well, we have 14 endowed chairs or distinguished professorships. So yes, we have over the years been able to add them, and it has made a difference in a number of areas.
How does that compare to other Cal States? I would think that we're probably at the top end of that scale.
I would guess, I don't know for sure, but I think if you look at the number of endowed chairs, I think we probably are at the top, or if not there, we're very close behind.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, up next, we're going to take a look at some of President Welty's accomplishments over the last 22 years. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Fresno State President John Welty could fairly be described as a transformational leader. Over the last 22 years, over $425 million in new facilities have been built on campus, as well as a myriad of other changes. Well, let's talk about some of your accomplishments. Can't do a laundry list, there's too many to name, but let's focus on maybe your greatest accomplishment, enhancing the academic standing of the university. What do you think that's been?
Well, I think there have been several. Certainly the Smith-Camp Family Honors College has played a major role. The addition of 3 doctoral programs are programs that were desperately needed in Central California and are going to serve, I think, this region for a long time.
And again, that was a new thing for a Cal State. I mean, usually doctoral programs are done by the University of California, not by California State University schools.
That's correct. And we had, when I first came, a joint doctoral program in educational leadership, but an independent doctorate that we now have in educational leadership, in physical therapy, and in nursing practice, all have come about as a result of legislative change.
Were we one of the first campuses to do that?
We were, yes. We were the first to get approval for the Ed Leadership doctorate, and we're one of really 4 or 5 campuses now that offer both physical therapy and nursing practice.
Okay. What about your greatest accomplishment that has directly impacted students? What would you say that's been?
Well, I think the commitment that we've made to community service and the addition of service learning has had a tremendous impact on students, because I think it's made their educational experience a lot more relevant. Students can see, as they're out in the community doing service, they can see a direct relationship with what they're being taught in the classroom. And I think as a result, feedback we've gotten from students is that that's been a very valuable learning experience for them. It's really improved dramatically their learning experience.
Yeah, it enhances. You learn theory in the classroom, then you apply it in the outside real world, and always makes it more relevant to the student.
Yeah, and I think we've been able to engage students in other ways through internships, undergraduate research. That's all really contributed to really creating a great educational experience for students.
Well, let's talk about community engagement. What's been the most impactful thing you think you've done to break down that town and gown divide that occurs in so many universities?
Well, I think we've consciously laid out in our strategic plan that we're going to seek to engage the university with the region. And we've set out to try to do that in really about 6 areas: in education, agriculture, business, manufacturing, health and human services. Those are ways in which we've very strategically and consciously attempted to either create centers or institutes that would be helpful in providing technical assistance and consulting help and further research to the area. And then I think in more recent years developed really what I would call tightly engaged partnerships with a number of agencies and businesses in the area that really demonstrate what the university can do or what we can contribute in terms of addressing issues.
Is that kind of also a part of the return on investment? You know, when the taxpayer invests in higher education, it's not just graduating a student, but if they're actually doing things to improve the community while they're in school, it would seem to improve the rate of return.
Well, I think there's no question. As a comprehensive university, comprehensive public university, we have a responsibility to really give back to the community and use resources that have been supported by the taxpayers in order to help improve that community, as well as provide a good educational experience for students. And that's, I think, one of the important things that we can do and really should be doing.
What about facilities? What would you say has been your greatest accomplishment? A lot of building on campus. What's your greatest accomplishment there?
Well, there have been lots of additions of physical plant. I would say the new library probably is a major addition. It's, I think, helped change the campus more than any other facility on campus, although we've had lots of new buildings that directly serve academic programs.
How much did that increase the library capacity on campus?
Well, in terms of capacity, let's see, it increased the physical plant for the library by about 40%. But the use of the library has doubled. And I think it is a library that certainly is no longer.
We hope they're studying in there.
No, there's no question. You walk in and you see students working in groups on their laptops. You see their ability to access virtually anything in the world. And it really reflects, I think, the way in which learning has changed. A lot more is being done in groups, teams. That's what the industry is really expecting these days. So students really get some real live experience in that area.
What about athletics? What do you think has been your greatest accomplishment there?
Well, I think there's no question over the years we've had some challenges in athletics with compliance with NCAA regulations, gender equity, and also academic performance. But today our athletic program is as strong as it has ever been, at least in the 22 years that I've been here. I think we've made a commitment to gender equity that puts us in among, if not the top Division I program in the country, among the top 5.
There have been some pretty amazing things that have occurred. I remember the baseball team was a big underdog a number of years ago, and no one expected them to win. That was a pretty amazing thing.
That was a great accomplishment, and that was fun to be part of that. I had very little to do with that, but that was a team under Coach Batesel that did amazing things, and it was fun to watch them mature and grow and then win that national championship.
Has there been one moment through this tenure that's been your most memorable?
Well, it's really hard to identify one moment. I mean, there's been lots of great highs. Certainly the baseball national championship, the softball national championship, beating USC, UCLA, and a few of those other places have been fun in athletics. There's also, I think, been great accomplishments and for me, commencement week is really the high of every year, because you see the incredible obstacles that students have overcome, and you see how we really help to transform lives. It's right there in front of you in story after story. And
you're signing a lot of degrees. Well, up next, we'll talk about some of the challenges that inevitably arise when you're president of a major university for almost a quarter of a century. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Perhaps most of our guests' greatest challenges may have come when leading a university with an NCAA Division I athletic program. What are the costs and expectations of running such a program? Well, let's talk about that for a little bit. Recently, Indiana University had a study, and they found that fewer than 10% of athletic departments at D1 public universities generated enough revenue on their own to cover expenses. And that, therefore, subsidies are increasing in athletic departments at a time when academic programs are being cut. Has athletics been the extracurricular activity that's wagging the dog, the tail that wags the dog? No pun intended.
Right. Well, I don't think so, but it is. There's no question a Division I program today is a challenge to generate sufficient financial support. In Fresno State, over the years, the commitment that we've made from general fund dollars has been pretty modest. I mean, we've really relied upon fan support, we've relied upon private support, and most recently additional TV revenue in order to support the program. But it's becoming harder and harder
It seems like almost like it's an arms race out there. I mean,
well,
you're always reading about the next school who's putting more stuff into their stadium or building a new weight center for their athletes or something.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, that has occurred, and certainly those larger programs that have been able to generate large amounts of money have taken and spent that money on facilities and coaches. And it is, I think, a challenge to maintain competitive equity with Division I programs. At the same time, there is a lot of value you get from a Division I program in terms of visibility and student involvement and community involvement in the programs. But I am concerned about the future of Division I intercollegiate athletics.
You know, it's interesting. I was reading it just caught my eye that they were talking about building skyboxes at Fresno's stadium, and they said they could generate about $5 million a year. And in the same article, they talked about my alma mater, the University of Wisconsin, that also has skyboxes, but they generate $5 million a game. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the men's basketball team has had its share of controversy with former head coaches Jerry Tarkanian and Ray Lopes. Looking back, how would you have handled those situations differently, or would you have handled those situations differently?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we did not have a strong enough compliance program in place, and that contributed to getting us into the difficulty. I think the important thing was that once we identified there were issues, we moved very quickly to not only report them, but also to take the steps that was necessary in order to put a program in place that has integrity, that's compliant with the rules. And I think we've got a very good program at this point, and there's a culture within that department now that really understands that compliance with rules is absolutely essential.
The other problem has been some highly publicized and costly gender discrimination lawsuits. What went wrong, and what's been done to address that problem?
Well, I think we had issues in gender equity in the late 80s, early 90s. I think we've addressed those issues, and in fact, as I said earlier, I think if we're not one of the top programs, we're among the top 5 in the country in terms of meeting the Title IX gender equity requirements. And I think, again, the culture of the program has changed dramatically so that there is support for both women's and men's programs in a way that I'm very proud of, because I think coaches are working together, administrators are working together, and we've made major strides in addition to facilities.
Speaking of facilities, Save Mart Center, pretty big facility on campus, multi-purpose arena, men's and women's basketball teams play there. It cost over $100 million. Truth be told, a lot of that was donated by the private sector, private donations, but it's still got a significant mortgage. In retrospect, was building the Save Mart Center a good idea or a bad idea?
Well, I think it was a very good idea. I mean, it certainly did provide competitive space for our basketball programs, and the fact of the matter was, if we built just a basketball facility, we could not have afforded it because it wouldn't be used enough. But I think now, with over 140 to 150 events per year in the Save Mart Center, what you see is people coming from all over California to Fresno, as opposed to everybody in Fresno going the other way to attend concerts and other kinds of major
an income
activities.
generator.
And it is an income generator.
I thought I had read somewhere that it was one of the busiest arenas not in the country, the world.
That's true. We're actually in the top 50 in the world in terms of the use of the arena and the number of people that attend events.
Well, here's an interesting question I think you might enjoy, and that is, if you had to advise the next Fresno State president, or any university president for that matter, on how to deal with challenges and crises that are inevitably going to occur during someone's tenure, what advice would you give him or her?
Well, I think it's one, important to have thick skin sometimes.
Keep your head low.
And it's also, I think, important that you listen and that you try to evaluate as much information as possible when you're faced with a challenge or an issue, and then take steps to deal with it. Probably the worst thing that can happen is you become consumed by a given issue, and it's important to stay focused on where you want the university to go over time. And yes, deal with the crises when they come up, but stay focused on what your real end goal is.
Okay, well, up next, we'll look at the future of higher education in California and the San Joaquin Valley. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Fresno State President John Welty has seen a lot of changes in higher education during his 29 years as a university president. What does he see for the future of higher education in California and the San Joaquin Valley? Well, there seem to be three big issues that the governor and the legislature are trying to address: access, cost, and student success and graduation rates. So let's deal with the issue of access. A lot has been said about increasing access to the use of online instruction in those hard-to-get classes. There was a recent New York Times editorial, however, that opined that, quote, they'll work well for highly skilled, highly motivated students, but are potentially disastrous for large numbers of struggling students who lack basic competencies and require remedial education. They go on to say that, quote, the courses would be a questionable fit for first-time freshmen in the 23-campus California State University system, where more than 60% of the students need remedial instruction in math, English, or both. So what do you think? Are online classes the answer to improving access, or are there other better answers?
Well, I think we are on the front end of some dramatic change in higher education, and everyone has been talking about online education. I think the fact of the matter is we haven't yet learned how to most effectively use online education. And I think we're beginning to get some answers, but as you point out, there are probably some students that aren't going to do as well if they're not self-motivated and they're not really coming from a learning background where they've been able to take some initiation and take responsibility for their learning. So I think we are at the front end of what will be dramatic changes. I don't think the answer is going to be all online education. I think what we're going to find is there are certain courses and certain disciplines can use online effectively. But more importantly, I think what we may learn through analytics is how students learn and be able to do a better job customizing the learning experience for students. And if we're able to do that, that's going to make higher education that much more effective.
Well, let's talk about cost. Who should pay for our education? Should it be the consumer, the student, or the parent? Or should it be the public, i.e. the state? Do we have the right balance?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that the balance is really tipping toward it's the student. And I think, unfortunately, there needs to be more investment by states in public higher education because they do benefit, the states do benefit dramatically from a better educated population. And the fact of the matter is we need a better educated population in order to make sure that our economy continues to flourish in the future. We need that more than any other time in our history. So I'm one that advocates balance, and I think the states do need to figure out a way to invest more in public higher education for the future.
Well, let's talk about cost for a second. How should universities be funded? Should they be funded based on enrollments or graduations?
Well, I think probably both. I think there's no question to encourage access, you've got to have funding. But obviously, I believe we should be held accountable, and graduation rates are one of the ways to do it. Now, I think it is important, in the case of the California State University, to probably use 6-year graduation rates because so many of our students have to work. Right. They're limited in how many units they can take, et cetera. A 4-year graduation rate for a place like Harvard, that may be a good way to hold them accountable. But there has to be alignment with the mission of the university in terms of how they're funded and held accountable.
You've led a university with a very diverse student population, yet you've managed to increase student graduation rates. So what's the secret to your success?
Well, I think our faculty and staff and administrators have worked very, very hard to increase the graduation rates and to really learn what makes a difference. I think we've learned over the years that it's probably better to provide a more structured learning experience for our students. It's better to engage them, as we talked about before, through service and internships, research, et cetera. I think we're doing more intrusive advising now, where we try to identify students that's not doing well in the second week of the course rather than wait till finals week. And all those things have contributed to improved retention and graduation.
I want to fit this last question in, and that is, what would you like your legacy to be as president of California State University, Fresno?
Well, I would hope that people say that Fresno State is a better place than it was in 1991, and if they can say that, I'll be satisfied.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank President John Welty of California State University, Fresno, for joining us. If you want to stay current with state and local politics, you can sign up for our award-winning and free newsletter, the Maddy Daily, by logging onto our website at maddyinstitute.org. And now, another perspective.
As chair of the Fresno State Foundation for 17 years, I have had the privilege of working with and observing Dr. John D. Welty in a myriad of circumstances, some planned and some clearly unanticipated. I have watched with admiration as he has led our evolving university through a period of profound and positive change and growth. John understood the needs of the new California as Fresno State initiated programs reaching far beyond traditional boundaries. He has been an enabler, in the best sense of the word, as he encouraged and motivated others to share his vision and bring their own ideas to fruition, all for the benefit of the students we serve. He has served as an ambassador for Fresno State and our region as he has traveled tirelessly and been recognized as a leader of organizations on state and national levels. Simply stated, the DNA of John D. Welty permeates the fabric of Fresno State. Leadership guru Max Dupree said the following: "Leadership is much more an art, a belief, a condition of the heart than a set of things to do." Dr. Welty has indeed captured that art, that belief, that condition of the heart of a true leader, and in so doing, enriched our university, all who have served it, and the students who are the reason for our existence. Godspeed, John.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the Maddy Institute, the California Channel, Casey, or Valley PBS. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions shared in the Maddy Report, visit our website at valleypbs.org/Maddy. This is Mark Kepler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.